Wanted to thank, first of all, our first speaker, Dawn, who was really formative in making sure that this event was going to happen. I know that, Dawn, you had like some obstacles, some complications over the last couple weeks that kind of delayed a few things, but I'm so glad that you're here. And Dawn was absolutely, she's just a huge part of why this event is taking place. So thank you so much, Dawn. And then also, I want to shout out to Scott Laxco, who I don't know if he is here, but he and I had a conversation, and he was really formative in coming up with the idea of different types of instructional designers fitting different types of character classes, which you may have seen on the landing page, things like that. Those character classes that I created, because he and I had this conversation about it, and I felt like it just matched really, really well, and I was very inspirational, and it was fun. That's the thing about this entire event. It's been a blast putting it together. I've just been geeking out the whole time and way behind on all kinds of stuff that I should be doing, but it was because I was like having too much fun with this event. And also, I want to say, if you didn't see the intro to D&D sessions that we did on this last Friday, you should check them out. I'll link one in chat. The one that Keegan hosted, and I don't have Christie's up yet, but I had Keegan's posted on YouTube. It was really, really wonderful to see that all happen, and especially with a bunch of instructional designers playing. I just couldn't. I can't even tell you how excited I was watching all of it. So yeah, and that's it. So I'm gonna go ahead and take myself off the screen. Dawn, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Can you test your mic real quick? I haven't heard anything from you yet, so I want to make sure that we
I am testing my mic.
There you are. Yes, Dawn, thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm going to go ahead and hide from the screen and let you take over, and you could even talk about, if you want to mention, what the run up to this event, some of the challenges we had, but go ahead, and I'll let you take it over, and enjoy, everybody. I'll see you throughout the day.
Thanks, Louis. Hi, everybody. I am so excited to be doing this. As you can tell, I'm geeking out just a little bit, but we're holding it back, trying to be professional here. But I'm glad that I'm around other people who are excited about this as much as I really enjoyed watching everybody on Friday, seeing a bunch of my fellow instructional designers playing games that I really love to share was just heartwarming. So thank you very much for all those who played and all those who checked it out. And if you haven't checked it out, you definitely should. So we're going to be just diving in to start this whole event, which Louis and I were talking about when we had a gamification conference and realized how many people played role-playing games. And it was close to our hearts, and kind of what we can take from that, because I use games a lot. My name is Dawn Metcalf. I am a digital academic designer at McGraw-Hill, and I'm the team lead for games and gamified practice activities. I'm also using emotivational design, which I am talking about how emotional resonance is the key for motivating learners. And that is kind of what I'm going to be talking about today when we're talking about Dungeons and Dragons and other RPGs and how we could use those lessons in our own training. So I'm going to just share the screen. Hopefully everybody can see this. Yes, I've got small elf ears. These are small ones, just to be part of the feeling here. So let us take a look. Make sure that everybody can see this. If you can see this, because I am technologically challenged, I want to be sure that everyone can see what I am showing. Are you able to see? Please show emojis or something that says, yes, you can see what I'm seeing. Great. Okay, so welcome to The Adventure Begins. This is creating powerful programming that matters, because these things matter to me, and I think they matter to us as designers. So let's start with, why are we talking about games? And whether we're talking about games, gamification, or gamified learning, what we're doing is talking about how to engage our audience. And the idea of games is somewhat fun in and of itself. We're talking about playing games, whether we're talking with children, teens, or adult learners, we're talking about having fun, which is usually the point, and keeps people engaged. So what is the first part? I like to think about how work and play work together. And that when we have the invitation to be creative and to be imaginative, that is fun. That is something that is fun for us to do. And the funny thing is that when we talk about games as opposed to work, it sounds like they're opposite, but they're actually not the opposite. People are willing to work to get good at a game. The idea of having to learn as we go is part of the fun. You're trying to learn how the game is played, what the rules are, how strategy works, how other people are playing the game. And you get better at it because basically you're stubborn. And that stubbornness actually becomes something that we can use. The idea of perseverance, of grit, of playing it over and over or going back and trying to figure out one part isn't a chore anymore. It's something that is kind of pulling at us. We want to win. We want to figure these out and we want to get better. And that's kind of what we're trying to do in training. We want that want, for better or worse. We want them to be able to feel compelled to try and beat the game. So the other part of that is a lot of people feel that when you're trying to do a training, either it's going to be too easy or too hard. How do we find that middle part? But the truth is that when you present it as a game, when you have a new game, nobody knows how to win yet. You just learn the game. You're going to have that expectation that you're going to have to learn something. There is that cognitive challenge that is trying to let us learn what we want to learn. And instead of making that into a hard thing that we have to overcome as an obstacle in training, it's actually part of what makes a game fun. Because if it was too easy, it would be boring. And we actually are disappointed if a game is too easy for us and we can just run right over it. We want to be challenged. We want to learn because we want to get better and beat the game. It's not about the end. It sounds funny. We're talking about the journey. I feel very Bill Baggins here. But I think it's not about points or gold stars or hearts. If anybody knows Searching for Bobby Fischer, the idea of printing out meaningless certificates is meaningless. It's not the things that you get along the way. It's actually beating the game and knowing that you did and that you figured it out. That's part of the fun. Something about role-playing games, and certainly Dungeons and Dragons and a lot of the things I like about it, is that it's collaborative and co-creative versus being competitive. Now, there is a competitive aspect, but it's not against one another. It's usually against the game or the obstacles or antagonists that you put forward in it. So we're actually working together to fight something else and not compete with each other, which is why I personally do not like leaderboards. I like to have it be that the challenge is built into the training game itself. Now, everyone contributes to a story, and that encourages not only ownership and participation, because honestly, it wouldn't be the same story without everyone. It's a shared narrative. It's something that we're creating together. And because of that, it becomes even more compelling and also invites us to be part of it. Because if we don't participate in this, it's going to fall apart. One thing that I find interesting about RPGs is that the knowledge is shared. What people find is going to be different. It's interpersonal, it's cumulative, it allows everyone to contribute and kind of reinforces itself. It lets us know that there's information to be shared from one another. It's not in a book, it's not just written down, it's not a list or a bunch of rules that you would pick up written down. It's actually kind of a living, breathing thing that you have to explore and discover with one another. And because of that, because we are the ones who are actually creating the story and we're creating the things that happen, that new information that we pick up is more sticky because we are the ones who are the change agents. We are the ones that affected the story and outcome. It wouldn't exist without our participation and depending on one another. And that's just a unique place to be if we're trying to work together to solve a problem in training. One thing that I really love, and this is a personal passion of mine, is diversity and inclusion. In RPGs, Dungeons and Dragons, you have to allow everybody at the table. Everyone is included in the narrative. You want them to be there. They're encouraged to contribute, to share skills or knowledge or backstory, pieces that maybe not everybody is allowed to see because of their roles or the skills that they have as a character. But it encourages those diverse ideas, that diverse characters and ideas and experiences are encouraged to be together because that's how we're going to solve something. The diversification is necessary because a party is not going to succeed if they're all the same people. If it's all the same characters, all the same classes, all the same stories, and all the same choices, it's not going to have that kind of individuality, and it's not going to be growing. It's not going to be personal, and it's not going to be as interesting. Even the choices are diverse. Some people can make choices, they're not actually right or wrong. It's more like a choose your own adventure path. Depends what kind of person you are as to what that path seems like a good idea or a bad idea. And the problems that you come across may not even be problems at all. Or there might be problems that we never even considered to be problems. Anybody who's played a Dungeons and Dragons game or any RPG knows that the players will normally go off on some tangent that you hadn't expected them to do, and certainly don't introduce a baby anything because they're going to adopt it. This is what happens. You have to roll with it. And what characters choose, what players choose, what learners choose creates the story, and it gives them buy-in. We don't want them to do the same thing or ask for the same people or ask for the same ideas at the table. That would be boring. Even modules that are written out change depending who plays them. Let's see, here we go. Knowledge is power. Yes, I know I'm a child of the 80s, if you remember that phrase. One of the things I like the most is when you discover information as you progress through a training or through a gamified learning, it makes it easier for people to work together. They are encouraged to be able to find information and share it. Otherwise, you're not going to get very far if you keep everything a secret. Also, different people will catch and notice different things. When they do that, they are adding their perspective and their background to the story. It will be something that one person may miss and the other person has a specialty in. It allows everyone to be able to rise to the occasion and share that with each other. When the knowledge is housed in a person, we own it. It's not something that's just written down. It's not something that's in a book or a manual. It's something that we own, and we have to share it with one another. And it encourages us to have curiosity and ask one another and engage. If anyone's done a how to host a murder games, you have to ask. You have to ask the people who are playing these characters, not the one who's dead. Obviously, they're not going to say anything. But it uses different parts of your brain and is far more active than having a passive training. It requires engagement in order to succeed. Hopefully I'm not going too fast for everybody here. We got a lot to cover. Progress is possible. Now, this sounds kind of funny because really anybody knows that in training, especially e-learning, you just get click-throughs. Click, 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 click. But I don't really count that as progress. That's just getting to the end. Progress is when you require a group to work together towards a common goal. And usually that goal is a large, complex issue, just like any training really is. And in order to succeed, the participants themselves have to break down the very large problem into smaller step-by-step solutions that they can work together with and usually give to one another as people who can specialize. That person might be good at one thing and you're good at another thing. So don't try to take it all on, break it up into small groups and work with each other. And that's what training is supposed to do. It's supposed to take something that seems enormous and make it palatable and make it something that we can tackle. And if we can do it together, even better. Now we're learning how to do this and the responsibility isn't all ours. And we can learn that interdependent, co-creative learning. I think that's where things really thrive. The other place is when you play something in the terms of a game, if you go into a game, you know that there's always a way to win. There's going to be a way to win. There's going to be a way to solve this problem. And gamers pretty much know that if you've ever done any large group gaming or multiplayer games online or anything that connects you with other people, if you can just get enough knowledge and the right people and the right resources, anything can happen. Anything is possible, and everything is, as the thought leader Marie Forleo says, everything is figure-outable. It can be done. You just need enough people, enough knowledge, enough pieces of the puzzle to make it work. There's a great series of TED Talks by game designer Jane McGonigal, no relation to Harry Potter. It's a fabulous bunch where she is looking at how bringing gamers together can solve actual real world problems. Because the funny thing is, when you are able to do these things in a game, those skills are often translatable into the world. And that is what training is trying to do. Take that situation that we've created and then apply it to their real world problems, which then become actually figure outable. This is a personal thing that I want to point out, and probably one of my favorite memes. A game isn't supposed to be the gold star that you get when you do the lesson. The game is the lesson. As you play the game, you're using your skills and knowledge in order to succeed. It only occurs to you later that the things that you've learned actually can be applied outside of the game. So this is one of my favorites from the Disney movie Beauty and the Beast, where we are talking about someone who just realizes that if you pick up the Dungeon Master's Guide, which is this huge volume that gives you all the rules for those people who are running the game, you realize that it's not about dragons at all. It is, in fact, math. And I'm terrible at math, but I'm really good at running a game. So it's funny that in that kind of fiction, you can create something that is real and has some real resonance outside of it. And I think that's the thing that I learned the most about working with games. You kind of can fool yourself into learning and see yourself as something more capable than you think you are outside of the game. So this is something I've learned. During the pandemic, I ran a little experiment because that's what I do. And I think we all went a little crazy. So this was my kind of crazy, which I enjoyed, around gaming and engagement and language and imagination. And I called it the Episode 1 Challenge. And after listening to and cartooning over 430 gaming podcasts, I discovered some patterns about successful storytelling that I use in my own training and development programs now. And I wanted to share them with you. So, number one, stories are sticky. People remember stories, especially the ones that feature them or something that they actually did. I know that we throw around a lot about the cognitive psychologist Jerome Bruner talking about that stories are 22 times more memorable than facts alone. Okay. What I find is that when you are part of the story, when you helped create it and it features something that you actively did, it sticks more. And it's a shared story. And so not only will I tell the story, but anybody else who was at the table or listened to the same episode or experienced the same moment, they'll tell the story too. And the two of us now have that as a memory together, and that's become a fact. It's a thing that happened. It's something that we can own and talk about together as if it was real, because in some way it was. It was something that we shared together. In that way, memories matter. When people experience something together, the lessons live on beyond us as shared war stories that get told and retold and relived over and over again. Have you ever been at, Thanksgiving or Christmas and it seems like you've never made another new memory since the 1980s? It's that kind of thing. You are reliving these stories that you share together. Your family knows them, you know them, friends know them. Bring them up over and over again. And every time you do it, reinforces that actually happened and that you were cause in the matter. You were part of that story. The third one comes as a borrowed thing from when I was a young adult author. I guess I still am a young adult author, but during the time that I was actively a YA author published in New York, one of the things that I championed was diversity in children's literature. I was part of the We Need Diverse Books Now movement. And my motto was, everyone deserves to see themselves at the shelves, and everyone deserves to be the hero or heroine of their own story. And here's the truth. People are heroes. And if we give them a chance to see themselves as capable or clever or competent or the expert, it allows them in the game context to see themselves that way and to rise to the challenge. Because we then perceive that whatever you're doing, you are the clever one, therefore whatever you want to do is clever. We enjoy cheering each other on. And in that context of seeing yourself that way and other people seeing yourself that way, you start to give yourself permission to try and act that way. That's the same thing that we try and do in training. In training, if we treat somebody as capable, competent, clever, able to problem solve, instead of somebody who is ignorant and doesn't know this stuff yet, and we have to hold their hand and bring them through it, it's a completely different approach. And I think we have completely different results. The last thing I wanted to talk about was Maya was right. This is no shock to anybody, but I'm talking about Maya Angelou. I'm kind of borrowing her poem, which I love to use a lot, and apply it to instructional design. So I kind of tweaked, I guess, I've learned that people will forget what you said and people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I think that's true of training as well, or any experience that we try and give. People might not remember exactly what happened at a training, exactly what was said, or exactly what it did, but they will never forget how it made them feel. And emotion is a powerful motivator, not only for engagement, but also for the experience itself. And placing our experiences within a game context allows us to make it into a fun, engaging, collaborative, cooperative, and kind of group warrior story where that knowledge is shared and became something real. So I just wanted to leave with this information, just to leave that up for you. My name, what I do, my portfolio, my email, and the fact that I'll be writing up an ebook coming out soon, which is called Motivational Design, and the basic idea that emotion and our buy-in is really part of the process of really good design. I base this, by the way, off of one of my favorite games, which is with Critical Role. If anybody knows anything about Critical Role, this is my little childhood heart was happy and blown away by the idea that people would watch each other playing Dungeons and Dragons and then pay for it to be seen on screen. Because it became so popular, just to give an idea, it was the most watched game on Twitch with 60 to actually 75,000 live viewers per episode, and broke the Kickstarter record when they decided that they would take some time and see if fans wanted to support them making a small 30-minute animation of their own game. In fact, it blew beyond the $750,000 that they were trying to get and went to $11,385,449. This made an entire 12-episode series that was, in fact, purchased by Amazon, who then purchased a second series and now purchased a third. It had a 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes and won the Best Animated Series. If you haven't checked it out on Amazon, it's there now. Anybody could watch it, but certainly those people who are interested in it or have ever played Dungeons and Dragons will be able to recognize a lot that's inside it. I think if this is the success that's going on and this is in our culture and our understanding and our listening, why don't we capitalize on it and use some of the success that they have created in order to make our work more successful? So that is a quick share, and I wanted to be able to turn this over and have a discussion with you. Admittedly, somewhat one-sided because I'm the one here. Let's see. There we go. Perfect. Matt Mercer's coming to your institution. That's amazing. That's amazing. Having somebody who's able to then have that kind of conversation and create a world in which you can play in, you understand that once that happens, people are then all coming together and they'll be able to share that story as if it was real, as if it happened to them. But because they all experienced it, it becomes real. So imagine bringing that into a training. Imagine having the time to have everyone come together and act in ways that are clever, smart, recognized as being an expert or insightful. They're able to come together and be treated as if they are the heroes. We are having a trouble spot. We are having this problem. We know that you can help us solve it. Here's the information. Please tell us what to do. Save the day. When presented that way, it becomes a much different conversation than we're going to sit and do a compliance training. You can't do much with some information, but if you can make it entertaining, do. And if you can't make it entertaining, make it brief. Hopefully then we can have everybody be pleased and be able to go forward and see themselves as successful. Yeah, and now it's their role. That's a great one. If anybody can think about what is a story that you remember, either from a book, a TV, a movie, there's got to be something that you remember that's stuck in your mind as being clever or being smart or being funny or being particularly heroic or a really good happy ending, a very satisfying ending. Those are the moments that you're going to remember about that story. You may not even remember the rest of the book or the series or the entire movie, but you'll remember that scene. You'll remember that moment. And the reason why you remember it isn't because of how well it was acted or how much music there was, although that obviously has something to do with it. What you're remembering is about how it made you feel. Tapping into that feeling, that's what people are going to remember. And if we can associate that feeling with their own success in a game, it's owned. And I think it travels with them not only inside the training and the game, but outside the training and the game. Because it was shared experience with people, they can turn to each other and say, do you remember when so-and-so did that? Or do you remember when I did that? Or this scene that just happened and how completely terrible it went and how we had to go back and do it all again. That's the war stories that happen. Easier when we were all together around a water cooler, but still works online. Can you remember? Yeah, you can remember how it starts and how it ends. That's right. But I think you also remember your part in it. If you had a role and you did something clever or horrible or sneaky or really threw everything for a loop, people are going to remember that, and you're going to remember that. That's what I like to bring into my trainings. I like to be able to touch upon what we can do when given the opportunity, the information, the knowledge, the skills, and a place that we can practice it, but practice it together as a group that's kind of interdependent and creating a story. Because when we are part of that, it makes it that much more real. And I'm not saying it has to be real, but I am saying that we do want those things to stay with you once the doors close. Because as much as I love doing presentations and games and dressing up and playing around, the important thing is that when it's over and the good feelings fade and the doors have closed and the next day happens and the next day, when the situation comes up, you can remember what happened in order to apply it and solve the problem. That's our goal. Yeah, it's really scary. I have to say, besides the fact that you see that I'm wearing ears and cloaks and whatever, I can be a little scary. People want something different, works, but we're usually scared to try something different. What we normally say is we want something that is the same, only different, because it's safe and because it works. But did it? Because when we do measures about whether something has worked, the limit seems to be what we expect to have happen. And when you try something new, there isn't something expected, and it can be unexpected, which can be great or it can be bad, and people would rather play safe. And so I understand that, and we have to talk into that, especially to our leadership. I think what is interesting is showing how people can be more engaged is something that everyone seems to look for in their trainings. We want people to feel engaged and feel empowered and to be able to provably take that information and be able to reiterate it later. But an experience works so much better than memorization, because if it's memorized, you can just do a job aid and have it applied and available in a moment. But when you play a game, you remember, just like you remember a favorite movie or a favorite television moment or a favorite book that you pick up in order to have that feeling again. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I hope that you're going to be enjoying what we're going to be doing here during this conference. This came out of an entire conversation about what we could do with games, what we've learned from games, what we imagine could be possible. And I think there's a lot that can be possible. And certainly the more that you put a bunch of creative, intelligent people together, the sky's the limit, really. I can say from my personal experience that as creative or as resourceful as any one person can be, when you get a group together that's working towards a common goal and bringing their different perspectives and their different expertise, their opinions, their backgrounds, their diverse knowledge, or the things that excite them, everybody looks for something different. And when we can share those differences together, the entire experience gets richer. it gets more involved and it becomes more owned by everyone who's playing it and participating in it. I don't know if are people here really big game fans, because when I say games, I'm finding that a lot of the times people think I'm talking about like Monopoly or Sorry. Or, I'm from the 80s, so I also remember when Trivial Pursuit was a really big deal. But I also was the early people who were playing things on Ataris and Commodore 64. I don't know if anybody else is into video games, but where that has gone and what board games are now, what apps are now, what you can find online and what you can do with Twitch and Nintendo and PS2 and what was Wii. Yes, Pong. I was definitely in the Pong and Gunslinger. Those were two of the games that I played, as opposed to Jumpman or Joust, and then going into the arcades with Qbert and Pac-Man. These were all things that we learned. Yes, Wolfenstein, I remember that. These were games that we were all learning. And how games have evolved is also how our learners have evolved. Everything from children to teens to adults, they have now grown up in a world that is gamified, where games have meaning and are very inclusive and very immersive. And really, the key of immersion and belief is feeling. It's our emotional resonance with what we are playing. How did it make us feel? What did we remember? And in the best of times, when it's a collaborative game, not just Dungeons and Dragons or other RPGs, but there are collaborative games like Pandemic, which wasn't supposed to be as accurate as it was. Lord of the Rings, they have a collaborative game. Collaborative games like Stuffed Fables is another one. There are a number of them that are built so that you work together to solve it. It's you against the game, until sometimes then one of you turns and it gets crazy, and that's like Betrayal at the House of the Hill. But those are the kind of games that I'm talking about, and I find them to be very engaging and learning. I'd love to hear what your favorite games are. I'm going to look in the chat, so that's why I'm going to look away. What kind of role-playing campaign arcs have I found to be more useful for learning environment? So I love arcs that are personally meaningful, and usually then you're asking a person to create a goal for themselves. So you have the overarching goal of the game or the scenario or the session, but then you have everybody with their individual goals. And what I find fascinating about that is when they have that is first and foremost in their mind, but since they don't know how they're going to apply it, they are even more attuned to what other information is out there that they can get from other characters, other players, other situations. Everybody seems kind of more bought into it when it's not just a group goal, but they also have an individual goal. A good example of that is from, it's called, I believe, the Flower Court, the Chromatic Kingdom, I think is what it's called. And that has a lot of, it's a very Regency era game where not only is there the overarching game of who's going to be sitting on the throne at the end, but every character has their own goal that they may or may not succeed in, whether or not they die, which I find fascinating. People are willing to jump on swords if it still means that their character is going to win. Is that all younger people? No, I can't say, and there's nothing that's all people. That's true. There's nothing that is everyone. But I do find that there are a lot of people who very much enjoy play. And play can mean very different things to very different people. But just like any sport or any instrument or any hobby, people will work hard to get good at their play. And if we can use that energy and that motivation into our training, it's only going to make the training more meaningful, more sticky, and probably more relevant in the long term for the players or learners. So these are things to think about. The old lemonade stand game, I do remember that.
Hey, Dawn, I want to interrupt you just for a little bit, because there's some things that I personally want to ask, and then also we have a ton of stuff in QA, so I want to get through some of these questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, I want to save your voice, so go for it.
Yeah. Well, first thing is, Dawn, I want you to talk a little bit about, because we've heard your background as an educator, but I want you to talk about your background as an author, as somebody who runs games, that part of it, because I think for this event, that's just as important as, what you do at McGraw-Hill and everything else. So could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I'm a born and bred geek. What can I tell you? I've been writing fantasy for over 20 years. I'm a multi-published author in fantasy for young adults. I'm with Dutton Books, HarperCollins, Harlequin Teen. I've written for gaming, for games like White Wolf Productions, or White Wolf Publications, sorry, which is RPGs, and Trinity, some works like that. And I worked with doing immersive games and education for 15 years, which was fabulous, and I very much enjoy it. And now I've published 3 of my own games, which is great and fun. And currently I run games as for charities. Mostly I raise money for LGBTQIA and the Trevor Project and Extra Life for children's hospitals. So there's a lot of people who love to play, and doing so that touches people and makes a difference, makes me happy. So I really enjoy that.
No, that's wonderful. And I know, just talking about your background as basically as a gamer all around has just been an really compelling, interesting thing to me. And then even just their conversations, you just like are so thought provoking, like boom, boom, boom. Just every conversation we had, I'm like, whoa, and during those conversations, I barely ever said anything because you were just like, I knew that today you'd be able to talk without, you'd be able to present without a problem. All right, so let me get to some of these questions that folks are asking here. I'll just show this on stage real quick. This one is from Jessica Ferris. Some of your favorite tools to use to make gamified learning.
For me, if you're talking about like, there's some tools that you really need, but I've used everything from Canva. I've done little small videos when I did a murder mystery online so that they could find things and the actions would happen. I've done large scale, during the pandemic, we did a large scale scavenger hunts in people's homes. I also did working with children because they were freaking out because they had been in front of screens for so long. We did a collaborative storytelling where the children would jump in with like Mad Libs kind of pieces, and we would co-create this story together. And at the end, I'm a cartoonist, so I was able to illustrate something that then I could send to them and they could color in at home. They were very excited about it because they knew what that scene was. They had created the story for that scene. Being able to use number generators, name generators, world generators. I know AI can do a lot of great things. I do get kind of nervous about the fact that it's using information and art specifically from other artists online. So I tend to make my own. There are mapping softwares available specifically that are usually for role-playing games, like roll20.net is a great resource for that. There are so many things that are available online now. Specifically in Dungeons and Dragons, if you were doing something online with participants, D&D Beyond is probably the #1 resource that people use to make characters and have dice available and the background information that you can access by the books, and that connects everyone online.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Now, Cecilia Fernandez was asking if you had an example of a real game in training. But I also just want to mention real quick, Julia Sheehy, who's in the audience, is going to be doing something at 11 o'clock Pacific time called Cyber Resilience, applying physical security in digital realms, because that's going to be a great example. But how about for you? Do you have an example of a real game in training?
Yes. I've done a number of trainings for people. One of the ones that is sticking out in my mind because it was insane was we worked with, after the Columbine shootings and the number of different shootings that were happening in schools, there was my thought that a lot of people didn't understand how many people it takes to save one life versus how many people can be taken by one person. And so for anybody who watched MASH 4077 growing up, because that was my thing, I did a 70-hour MASH unit. And we had people come in and instantly drag them in to start doing triage to help with what was supposed to be a put upon MASH unit. And that system involved groups of 3 working together almost instantly. And they created shorthand and they worked together in order to save lives. And it was 70 hours of nonstop waves of wounded coming in. And I had staff of 42 or 45 people who were doing that. So there's one for you. Don't recommend it. That was work. It was about 2 years of creating that, but people remember it to this day, and it was like 30 years ago.
Wow. That's amazing. Okay, I have this question from multiple people, Krista Worth, others. I think Cecilia asked too. Your slide deck, are those illustrations yours? Is that something you did?
No, that's not something I did.
Okay.
I do cartoons, not like that. But I do know that I did actually recognize the artist's work. So I was very excited to see it. And I really appreciated that it has diversification in it.
Yes.
Because anyone can game. And the ability to imagine is universal. So
love it. What, but are you going to make that deck available?
I will make that deck available if everybody would want it. More than happy to share.
It's so good. All right. Oops. Let me mark this one as answered.
It wasn't for healthcare workers, for the people who I was working with Concerned Citizens for Humanity at the time as a client, and they were my client, and I was just curious about what could this. I will look up the artist name for you. I will. The training was really about empathy. That MASH unit was about empathy and looking at how people could work together to save people. And they actually had an 86% success rate, which was better than most hospitals. So really
love it. Mm-hmm. All right. So I got this one from Julia. Where might I begin to gather data as evidence in effectiveness for the learner when gamification is used? Evidence my employer has trouble knocking down when they dismiss the idea out of hand.
That is fair. So one of the things that I did was pick up, like you heard, that stories are 22% more likely to be understood and stick with than facts. Things like that. If you look at the information behind stories, there's also McGonigal, which was on the TED Talks. She has a lot of information and gives and cites backgrounds and information. You can get that. I also know that there have been studies done in Stanford around this. I believe Harvard as well, which is my alma mater. There's a lot that is about games being used as effective tools for learning. You may have to look at what the age range is, whether it's andragogy or pedagogy, but it should still be relevant. We're all kids at heart, so it still works.
Love it. Do you recall the artist's name for the slides?
I don't. I'll have to look it up, but I recognized it from other things. Again, I'm a geek and I read a lot of comics and graphic novels, and since I am myself an illustrator, that's what I've been doing for a long time, so I very much enjoy it.
I love it. All right. There is so much to you, Dawn. I mean, I want to talk about that Discord that you're a part of. There are all these different things. I mean, we could probably go on for hours and hours. You're just such a fascinating human being. You have like so much going on. But we're probably running out of time here. We've only got a couple of minutes left. But what are you currently doing now when it comes to games?
Well, I'm working from McGraw-Hill, and we're going to be doing some games. It's going to be a great time for gamified learning. I also am running this Discord. It's been 3 years that I've run it as a collaborative writing project. I think it's been fantastic. I've worked with creators all over the world. I very much appreciate the things that I've been learning there.
Can you just describe that a little bit? The thing on Discord.
Sure. How is a quick way of saying this? Imagine, if you will, a bunch of people who all come with a character in mind, and you are going to set up a town in a frontier town, and you need to get resources, and you need to discover, and you need to rely upon one another. So I was invited on later in the game. It had already been established, a number of people. I didn't know any of these people. And I created a character who could introduce themselves. And I basically took over, and it was great. And I got to interact with these people who then together we created not only the growing town and things that were important and characters that were important and stories that were important to us, but how the characters developed could never have been done just by myself. I'm an author, and if I want to write all the characters and everything about it, that's great, but that's nothing compared to creating something that then other people react to. You are intelligent because other people see that you're intelligent, or you are a troublemaker because other people see that you're a troublemaker, and you will grow into those roles or push against those roles, and that will create something way beyond that you would have ever come up with on your own. And as a person who's a creative and is a writer at heart, being able to see how people interpret things differently and come up with ideas and solutions that I never would have come up with is eye-opening, not only to myself as a creator, but also to myself as a person. So I've learned a lot, and a lot of these people have become my friends over the past 3 years, to the point that we actually met in Atlanta, Georgia, and it was phenomenal. It really was.
That's awesome. And I just also want to throw in there, one of the things that when we had first started talking, Dawn, that I mentioned was LARPing, because my 9-year-old, my son, is a LARPer, which is LARP is live action role playing. And we had talked about that, and you do that as well. You were a professional LARPer.
I was. So that was a long time ago, but yeah, for 15 years, I played in it, and then what normally happens is that then I take over, and I started writing them, and I started writing multiplayer games that would go either 4-hour games, so like those murder mysteries that you used to do those parties, it's about 4-6 hour game, up to full one-day games, up to, like I said, with the MASH 4077, that was a 70-hour weekend game, all inclusive. And it is unbelievable what you can create and what people can create. And their involvement feeds my stories and is still war stories that we talk about still, as if they were very real, but they were. In some sense, they were. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. I need to post your LinkedIn profile in chat, because I think that there are a lot of people that really need to connect with you. You are an incredible resource, and I am really grateful that you helped put all of this together and inspired this event.
Excited. Thank you so much, Lewis, for bringing this to life. I cannot wait to see the people come up, and everyone who's here, just swim in it. This is going to be fantastic. Happy to help anybody. If anybody wants to have questions, more than happy to help. And I really do believe that together, we just have, we have 500 some odd people here who are creative, intelligent people who want to make a difference and make things happen. And yeah, when we all get together, we can make things happen. So I hope you have a great time. I'm really looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Next session is going to be with Keegan Long Wheeler and John Stewart. Let's see here. I'm pulling up John Stewart. I just realized I didn't have a session description, but this is going to be absolutely amazing. Their session starts at 10 a.m. Pacific. I guess that'd be 1 Eastern. Lessons learned from game-based professional development. And just to remind you, Keegan was the one who ran the D&D game, the first D&D game on Friday. He was absolutely fantastic. It was like one of the funnest things I've ever seen ever. And so he's going to be in that next session with his coworker, John Stewart. So please stop by for that one. And we've got, other than that, I guess we've got 4 more today. The entire lineup is going to be great. So hopefully you can return for that. And with that, oh wait, let's see, Catherine, where can we find the resources mentioned in the session, like the video you mentioned earlier, and Dawn's slide deck? So let me post the video real quick, just so that during this break, we have like an hour break, you'll be able to check that out. It's I'll have this YouTube link here I'll post it right now. Check this out. It was super fun. You can fast forward past the intros, and then it really gets going. And then I don't know, Don, we'll work on those slides and just getting them out to everybody. I'll probably just post them as on a resource page after this is done and share that out to everybody.
Happy to share it. Just remember, everybody here, you are the hero or heroine of your.
Thanks, Don. And thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jacqueline. All right. Yes, and you can, Nicole, you can rewatch the sessions. Just come back into the schedule. You'll see right after this completes, you'll see a like something like it says replay or something. You could rewatch these, and then I'll also be putting these out in YouTube land, so you can watch them then. All right, everyone, I'm going to go ahead and close this out. We'll see you. Got about an hour plus break, and then we'll be back. Thanks, everyone. Thanks again, Don.